You down, like, if you want to bring it in the middle of my meeting. No, well, I'll just put it in the refrigerator out. Very good idea. I do. It's the lifesaver. It is time. Are you ready? Let me start recording. All right, let's call the Dayton City Council and Planning Commission meeting at 6:30 to order. Let's rise. Okay. I always forget the thing I was going to say. Let us do the pledge, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have Councilor Mackin, we have Councilor Tycro, and Councilor Hildebrand, myself. So that's a quorum, but we are missing Councilor McGuire and Councilor Wellner. And I did not.
They did not say.
Okay.
Robin? Oh.
Robin's at that piano thing.
Oh, okay.
She has an excuse thing, so.
Do I excuse one excuse?
Yep. All right, let's start with the appearance of interested citizens. I have Derek and Raylan Rice signed up. If I could get you up here.
Yeah.
Right over there is fine, Derek.
I'll
We're
just
not
pull
set
my
up
chair
for
right
you.
here, so.
The podium here today.
Madam Mayor, distinguished councilors and commissioners and staff. My name is Derek Price, my lovely wife, Linda. We reside at 521 Ferry Street, Dayton, Oregon, 97114. I think I did all the official stuff, just in one fell swoop.
Right on. Thank you.
I just wanted to take a second. I found out there was a joint meeting happening this evening, and we pulled the report and reviewed it, and just wanted to swing by for two reasons. First, just to say how much I appreciate the hard work that the city does on this kind of planning. I know a lot of cities kind of aren't thinking ahead and aren't forward thinking, similar to thinking ahead. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time and the initiative and leadership to put this together. So for folks who are interested in housing, it's very encouraging to see this kind of work going on. So I very much appreciate it. Second thing I wanted to mention, Raylinda and I are also working to develop middle housing. And so we're putting together a program around building and developing ADUs in town. We're starting to roll that out now, and I thought this would be a good place to kind of chat with other folks who maybe have a similar concern that we provide that sort of housing for our citizens locally. I passed out a number of,
Desk and.
give you guys a couple there, and if anyone wants one I missed you, I apologize, I'll get you one. Anyhow, we're this weekend beginning to pass out about 800 of these to everyone in the city, as many doors as we can knock on and put them out there. And we're going to have a little session in February to kind of educate people about ADUs and what they are and how they work and the opportunities that exist in the city to develop that kind of housing on their properties. If you're interested at all, you're super welcome to attend, or if you know someone who may be interested in it, they're also welcome. I guess there are actually three things on my list. So that was the second thing. The third thing, as we've been working to develop ADUs and think about it and identify constraints or things that maybe make it challenging for folks, there are two things that I thought I would mention that the city could maybe consider as you guys are considering new code or code amendments that might help encourage ADUs. one, Kurt and I have already chatted about a little bit, and that's a little bit of flexibility with rear yard setbacks, side yard too, but side yard setbacks in Dayton are pretty flexible, especially in the R2 and R3 zones. In R1, it's a little more challenging, but R2 and R3, pretty flexible. You can go to zero yard with some, you know, things that you need to manage. There is a variance on the rear yard setback of 10%. And so that's helpful. But I think there's a lot of flexibilities for cities to be able to consider rear yard setbacks. I don't think that there's a state mandate. I think it's very much within the city's purview to set those. And maybe back in the day when everyone wanted to hang out in their backyard and have a garden or whatever, maybe large setbacks made sense. But now when we're struggling to find housing, it may be an opportune time to think about, hey, maybe we change these setbacks. So that's one thing the city could do to really help out folks that want to develop middle housing in an ADU. The other thing, and I think the city is probably kind of working on it, but just some consideration around SDC fees. I know the city, I think, is engaged right now in some dialogue around that. One thing I would advocate for and maybe encourage the city to consider is a graduated SDC for households of 80% or less of AMI. So for folks who are low income and need kind of a hand with that, it'd be a really great way. And I know the city maybe doesn't know exactly what the SDC fees are right now for an ADU. So I mean, maybe this is a conversation, but if the city does adopt a full SDC for an ADU, perhaps it's graduated based on some kind of income level. The city of McMinnville has a model that they put in place 2 years ago that seems to be working. So there's already code around that written, developed, and in place that they could consider adopting. I have that if anyone is interested. I didn't bring it this evening because I know you have a lot to consider already, but I can get that to you if that would be helpful. But I know Kurt probably has 10,000 resources, far more robust than I would. So anyhow, those are my 3 things. Thank you so much for your time. If you're interested in continuing our little thing, you're super welcome. But otherwise, I just really appreciate your help and hard work to lead the city as we consider where our kids are going to live in the future and where I'm probably going to live. So
Can we put this, sorry, Derek, can we get this up on our website? The event that he's gonna put on and just the information that's available. Okay.
all right. Thank you so much, guys. We're going to listen for a few minutes and then we'll duck out quietly. All right.
I'm not quiet, I don't know why you have it. Okay, did we get Judy? Excellent, all right, we'll go ahead and move on to Judy then for her public comment.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Judy Gerard, 305 Main Street here in Dayton, and I'm speaking as the chair of the city's Historic Preservation Committee right at the moment. And I just wanted to remind the council and the Planning Commission that some of our current housing stock is historic and some are National Register of Historic Places sites. Dayton does have an ordinance that deals with demolition and alteration of our historic buildings. And in the past, in some communities, not necessarily Dayton, many historic homes have been demolished to put in what I see is termed as middle housing. And also in some communities, some historic homes have been altered to such an extent to put in middle housing, that they no longer retain their historic nature or they're no longer of value as a historic resource for a community, for that community. So just knowing that, I just wanted to bring it again to your attention that we do have an ordinance to relate to that. I didn't see anything in the materials for this meeting that acknowledged that in any way, shape, or form. I know that Caitlin on the Planning Commission and of course Cindy both have expertise in the information about historic homes, and Cindy especially about our ordinance, so I will defer to them for your discussion on this topic. I don't intend to stay connected to your meeting here. I just wanted to raise the issue, bring it to your attention, and say, therefore, you've been duly reminded.
Excellent, thank you, Judy, I'm right there with you.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to leave now. Bye-bye.
All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and move on to our discussion items. Item number one is our Dayton buildable lands inventory, pages 1 through 16. I think I see that right. And are we handing that over to you, Kurt?
That seems right. Welcome everybody to the work session this evening. The purpose of this session is really to share with you the work we've done on this project over the past year, share the deliverables. As many of you heard me say, a couple of years ago, we applied for a grant to update our comprehensive plan with a housing capacity analysis, which is really the core element of the housing components of the comprehensive plan. The LCD wanted us to wait on that because rules are in flux right now, so they suggested the project that you see before you instead to look at some of our existing policies, look at the existing components of the comprehensive plan, and do some public outreach around the topic of middle housing. So there are no actual comprehensive plan updates that are being implemented right away with this project. Those would come with the housing capacity analysis when we complete that work. So there's no product that goes through the typical legislative amendment process of amending the comprehensive plan. So instead of that, we thought we would give the city council the opportunity to pass a resolution to hopefully give their okay to kind of give their blessing to staff to pursue these recommendations as opportunities become available. So given the fact that the usual public hearing process would be involved in this, we thought this would be the best time to communicate the results to city council and to planning commission and to everybody that wasn't included in the project advisory committee that has been doing the primary work on this project. So that is the background why we're here this evening. And with that, I will turn it over to our consultants to share with you the product of their work. And probably first good thing would be to do is to introduce yourselves to the rest of the group that haven't been working on this project over the past week.
Thank you, Kurt. My name is Grace and we're with Winterbrook Planning, and we were brought on with this grant from DLCD to do this work this year, and we're excited to talk about everything that we've learned and heard in Dayton.
And Maddie, also with Winterbrook Planning.
Were you at Capitol Day yesterday?
I wasn't.
There was a girl that looked very much like you. I was like,
That's funny.
I had to ask. Excuse me.
You're good. No problem. Yes, if you wanna move the slides along, we have. Sorry. We have this slideshow presentation and we're gonna go through the work that we've done in this past year and provide an overview of things. You also have a number of reports and memorandum in your packets that if you want to peruse them in more detail in your own time.
I did actually.
Very welcome to, but there's a lot of information, so we're gonna be going through things fairly quickly, and as we're talking, feel free to stop us and ask questions or ask for clarification. So, first we're gonna go over just what this project is, give you the details of the buildable land inventory, talk about some of the engagement work that we did around middle housing and housing in Dayton. And then we're gonna look at what's in the comprehensive plan, what's the policies now, and are there suggestions for strategies and policies in the future? And then we'll talk about this roadmap document that we've put together, which basically lays out how the housing element of the comp plan would change with a HCA or housing capacity analysis. Okay. So as Kurt was giving this background, a lot of this is laying the groundwork for future work, which is this housing capacity analysis. And that is a methodology or strategy to look at Dayton's housing needs over the next 20 years and look and see are our policies, strategies that we have now, are they enabling the housing that Dayton needs in the next 20 years and enabling the housing by different incomes as well. And we'll get into that a bit more later. And so in this project, first we did the buildable lands inventory that Maddie's going to talk about. And that looks at the supply of housing and land in Dayton. And we did a lot of engagement throughout the project on middle housing with the project advisory committee, a number of stakeholder meetings and open house. And using this information and the BLI information, we developed a number of recommended housing strategies that could be implemented in the future. And also created this housing update roadmap to show how should comprehensive plan be changed at the time of the HCA.
Great, so I'm gonna talk about the buildable lands inventory and some of our engagement takeaways, like Grace just said. So, this exercise is to estimate the amount of land that's available in Dayton for housing, so residential land. And the map that's on your documents and on the screen shows land in Dayton that's developed in the gray color and land that is vacant in the darker orange, and then land that's partially vacant in the light orange color. And this partially vacant designation means that there is land on that tax lot, but the tax lot is big enough that in this methodology, they say that it could be like divided and further developed. In the case of like the UGB swap area, it would probably be developed into many lots, or in the case of maybe one of the lots in the city, maybe it would just be divided into two, or an ADU would be put on, something like that. Yeah, and our findings from the BLI suggested that there are about 36 acres of buildable land between partially vacant and vacant within the city limits, and then 123 outside of the city limits. So this land inside of the city limits is largely R1, which is the single family residential zone, 25 acres of that. And then there's almost 9 acres of R2 and none of R3. So that was kind of our findings for the breakdown of what's available inside. And then about 3/4 of the land available is outside, largely in the UGB swap area and the Neck Road area, which would need some public facilities upgrades in order for that to be feasible, for those annexations to be feasible, which is something that we did talk about a lot with the project advisory committee, just the challenges there. And then next, this has already been mentioned a few times, and you all are probably familiar with the term, I'm guessing, but like Grace said, a lot of our work with this project was to do middle housing education, and it aligns well with the BLI because middle housing can be used as a good way to do this infill development within the city, or just to provide greater housing units on smaller areas as the area in the UGB swap gets developed. And yeah, I guess just to touch on what Judy said in her comment, I was just thinking that we're definitely not with this methodology like suggesting that houses are replaced with middle housing necessarily. It's more just like the vacant land that is developed could just reducing barriers to develop that vacant land at higher densities than we currently see. Just a point there. All right. So Dayton currently allows for actually a lot of middle housing in a lot of the zones. So ADUs are allowed in R1 and R2, which are the zones where single families are allowed. And duplexes are allowed in all zones. And townhomes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters are allowed in both R2 and R3. So we actually see that Dayton allows a lot of middle housing. It's not necessarily being built, which leads us to think that maybe there's other reasons, which could be like what Derek was talking about, things such as setbacks or other development standards that are prohibiting it. It could be just the fact that a lot of the land in Dayton within the city limits is already developed.
And I'll mention a lot of the middle housing types have much larger minimum lot sizes that may make it less feasible.
Mhm, mhm. I
Yeah,
was gonna ask about that.
yeah, and recently, the state requirement that duplexes are allowed on the same lot sizes as single family, but the rest are still higher minimum lot sizes than single family in those zones. Okay, you can move on. Okay, so like Grace mentioned, we did a bit of engagement. We held one meeting with the property owners in the UGB swap area. That was an invite meeting to them, just so we could talk about annexation and middle housing and get them familiar with that topic. We also had a Spanish language meeting with members of the community to educate them on middle housing and also just hear about people's experiences finding housing and in Dayton. And then we also had a community meeting that was open to the public where we had posters of all of our progress in this project and kind of just talked people through, and they got to ask questions. And yeah, we probably had like 25 or 30 people there, so it was pretty good turnout. Yeah, so we heard generally that Dayton, people think that Dayton has a housing supply and affordability problem, and that there were few opportunities to rent or buy housing, especially for those with lower incomes. And we even heard some stories of people like having to leave Dayton because of this issue. And we heard from people that given this, they felt that having a diversity of housing types and added diversity of income levels was important, and that they saw that middle housing was a way to solve this problem. People generally liked the cottage cluster housing as a way to kind of maintain personal space while still having slightly higher density. And then also we heard throughout that people really desired more businesses and commercial development, and they saw this as pretty integral to their feelings of like the small town feel of Dayton. Yeah, so we just used these takeaways along with the information in the BLI to inform some of the policy recommendations that we made that Grace is going to talk about next.
Yeah, so this next page or slide that you're looking at is the current comprehensive plan housing goals, so the chapter 7 goals. And these goals are generalized, and I think a lot of them still resonate with what we heard from a lot of the people who came and did engagement meetings with us. And it's to provide housing at a variety of income types and make it available for those who want to live and work here. And I'm gonna run through this quickly because we have more information to go on, but you can do the next slide. And the goals are implemented by these housing policies, and these, once a housing capacity analysis is done, they'll probably inform some new housing policies. But we wanted to look at the housing policies that Dayton has and provide some interim direction, because the last time chapter 7 or the housing chapter in the comprehensive plan was updated was about 2007. So things have changed a lot since then. And until new policies are implemented or adopted, we wanted to give some guidance. So you can go to the next slide. And so the guidance in the meantime, a lot has to do with the potential annexations of the swap area and questions around what to zone those properties as they come into the city. And first, we recommend discouraging annexations until we have more information on at the HCA. And obviously, if the property owner wants to annex, they can choose to do so or choose to apply to do so at any time. So you can't prevent somebody from applying. But I think once we have the HCA, we'll have a much better idea, and there may be new zoning policies or minimum lot sizes that could inform future development as well. And in the meantime, we recommend encouraging R2 or R3 zoning, and this is based a lot on the BLI results. And I think there would have to be a pretty high burden of proof on the part of the applicant to make a case for R1 zoning, given those results. And this is also a very good time to review annexation criteria. And I know Kurt's been doing some work at that and just making sure it's very clear what's needed in an annexation application. So it's clear for both the applicant and the city to make sure that things like public facilities are being demonstrated adequately and that sort of thing. And then finally, coordinating extension of public facilities to the swap area. The city's been doing a lot of this work already, but it's an impactful part of the future of housing in Dayton. A lot of the housing will likely be built in that area, and so it should continue to be a priority to figure out how to coordinate that, how to finance that. All right. And then next, we're going to talk about a number of recommended housing strategies. And we have some general strategies that could be implemented by more fine-grained policies that we have below. And so the first one is to encourage right-sized residential density. And this would be work again done in the HCA, but reducing minimum lot sizes for things like middle housing could make them a lot more feasible. A lot more feasible. I just unintentional pun. And denser housing, smaller housing is more affordable, which is really a lot of the housing that Dayton needs. And allowing middle housing. And along with this, we recommend looking through the zoning code and looking at things like setbacks and making sure there's not unnecessary barriers or poison pills to the type of housing that Dayton wants to encourage. And finally, clarifying the relationship in the code. Right now, there's a few just unclear, slightly contradictory ways that the code addresses density that could be streamlined and easier to understand. So the next one. And another recommended strategy is to align comprehensive plan designations and zones. So right now, Dayton has one comprehensive plan, residential comprehensive plan designation. That's just the residential designation, and 3 zones, 3 residential zones. And we think that if Dayton were to implement 2 comprehensive plan designations, one with lower density housing and one with medium density housing, this would better help Dayton plan for which zone they should be in the future.
And how much does that cost to have a secondary comprehensive plan?
Well, it doesn't cost anything once you have it. It's just figuring out how to do that. And I think that would be something that with the HCA would make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because with that effort, you're going to be looking at what the zoning is.
So while we could potentially do that as we're changing.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think that would make sense. And having that mostly helps in future planning. For example, if there was 2 comprehensive plan designations, the swap area would have either one of those designations, and that would help you point to what to zone those areas and what sort of public facilities to plan for that.
Yeah, so the housing capacity analysis will require a comprehensive plan update, and that would be the time to
created.
review these recommendations and implement those recommendations with specific language in the comprehensive plan. There are other, all the elements of the comprehensive plan sort of fit together in a puzzle, so. You can't, a lot of times you can't amend one without influencing another, so. That drives some of the other recommendations that are in this work, so yes, that's anticipated. We're hoping the city will be gracious enough to give us another grant to continue the work. in this process.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the ideas in these recommended strategies and policies is that they could be reviewed at the time of the HCA and potentially implemented if it continues to make sense. All right. Oh, and could you go back? Yeah, there's another strategy is encouraging housing patterns that support neighborhood commercial. Yeah. A lot of this relates to density, having enough density to support that neighborhood commercial, which is addressed in the other policy. But there's some more specific strategies that could include looking at the criteria for allowing neighborhood commercial and planned unit development standards. And then potentially allowing mixed use buildings that have both residential and commercial.
Counselor Mackin has a question.
Didn't we just take that out of our code as it, because it wasn't being used? Or is it? I thought we just made a change that said, no, we're not gonna do that anymore. Or was it specifically for the downtown area? We still allow, it's just not being done. So here we're gonna be encouraging it. I got the impression.
So,
we had taken it
so
out.
we're really talking, we're not specifically talking about. Development in commercial zones right now, we're talking about. Development
Commercial in residential,
areas.
okay.
Yeah, so a couple of ways to do
Okay.
that is. I mean, one way that's common is through a planned unit development. Proposal. A certain amount of the property could be designated for a neighborhood commercial development that would be. Provide a corner store or shop or
Right.
some other facilities that would. Produce a little bit more of a complete community in that area.
Yeah.
So that's.
Like a
That's
pet
just
market
one.
with the pets living upstairs.
Actually, I think he lives, the original plan for that whole area was a little strip of commercial properties right across from the middle school. That was like the final phase of the Bell properties, Country Heritage. I forget what it was, but there was originally a plan for some commercial right across from the middle school. So, this is a good idea, get a little center market that far from where you live. It explains what a question I had back here, we're supposed to be building things that are close to the commercial area, but we don't have any land close to our commercial areas.
That's exactly what we heard.
Good, yeah, okay. Oh, cool.
Over and over and over.
It seems like we just got rid of this and we're bringing it back, so that's cool, because
No.
I didn't think it should have gone.
Diversity is the way to go in
Live and work
land
and
use and so many other things.
you don't have to commute, you just go upstairs or downstairs.
Well, I mean, even when we went to Capitol, the city day at the Capitol yesterday, when we're walking, we were talking about the old architecture and this and that and. How fun it is that it is unique, that you walk through and see all these differences rather than just the same house over and
Oh,
over. and
yeah.
over.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. That's it, thank you.
sorry, we talk a lot.
That's great. Yeah, I think too, what you might be thinking of is the commercial residential zone where I think. We didn't include it in the BLI because. Eric told us that maybe residential is not being.
Now that
Something
we
like
talked
that.
about it, it sounds like residential in a commercial zone wasn't being used.
Yeah. I think
Bringing
that-
commercial into a residential makes a lot more sense.
Yeah,
So
A good.
Good clarification.
Or
Thank you.
lands to use.
All right.
Great, you can go to the next one. There we go. And this next strategy is just making it more possible to build middle housing and particularly accessible middle housing. A lot of people demonstrated that they really wanted to be able to age in place as much as possible, not with stairs, that sort of thing. And also having housing for people with physical disabilities.
Yes, that was good.
I think I have the only one in Dayton.
That's, yeah, wow, okay.
I built the house with ramps
Mm-hmm.
and I have wider doors inside. But it means I can use my wheelchair anywhere. I think I might have the only home in Dayton like that.
Wow.
I've seen some add-on ramps. But I like the fact that we're finally, 8 years we've been talking about affordable housing. We're finally talking about accessible.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Oh, good, yeah. Yeah, and there's a number of strategies. Some could include SDC exemptions, for example, or tax incentives, and also education as well. And you can go to the next. And finally, something that we heard as concerns from a lot of people in Dayton is they don't want cookie cutter housing.
Yeah.
Particularly a certain development in Newburgh, I think.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
We heard
It's
about that one a lot,
horrific.
yeah. So a way to potentially mitigate for this year could be to implement some design standards for middle housing. All standards for housing need to be clear and objective, and so any design standards would need to be, and we'd also want to ensure that it doesn't create, make it less, or basically make it more expensive, because a lot of the point of it is providing more accessible housing, and so an easy way to do that might be to do, for example, what Dayton does for single family dwelling design standards, where there's a menu of options and you have to do a certain number of things in that menu. Right? Go on. So those were the strategies that we recommended, and those are also all in the report. And then finally, for our last deliverable, we made this comprehensive plan housing update roadmap. And this was to lay out what the process would be to update chapter 7, or the housing chapter, in the comprehensive plan. And what else might need to be changed in the comprehensive plan at the same time, because the document needs to be internally consistent. And you can go to the next slide. So the housing capacity analysis will be a lot of what is in that chapter 7 of the comprehensive plan, and it's based on this 20-year forecast, and we have estimates or draft numbers of what that forecast is for Dayton, and that's on your page on the slide. And you can see that about 200 new housing units are anticipated to be needed in Dayton in the next 20 years, and those are also broken down by income category. And so Dayton will need to demonstrate that it can provide for that amount of housing for the next 20 years. Sometimes cities don't have enough land within their UGB to provide that housing, and then urban growth boundary expansion could be appropriate, but that's very unlikely to be applicable for Dayton. So it would mostly be looking at what are the zones, what's allowed in each zone, and those sorts of policies and things. You can go to the next slide. So yes, in chapter 7, it would be adopting an updated HCA, updating public land need, because those forecasts change the land need estimates for things like schools and hospitals and parks and that sort of thing. Updating the goals and policies, potentially some of the policies that we've been recommending, and then updating the comprehensive plan and zoning map at the same time. And for internal consistency, these were changes that we identified also needed to be updated at the same time. Some of those are really simple, it's just updating maps, but also adopting the residential lands inventory or buildable lands inventory. And the plan. Okay. Let's see, and we also identified a number of things that, while not maybe strictly necessary to be updated at the same time, might be good ideas for the city to look at updating. And some of these are really easy, so it's like, while you're updating the comprehensive plan, maybe update these things at the same time, and some of these things are bigger. For example, the city could look at potentially getting a grant for, or doing an economic opportunities analysis. And we included this because this is kind of like the economic equivalent of an HCA for looking at economic lands, economic opportunities, and we heard that that was so important in Dayton, and EOA might really be beneficial for the city. And then I also know that Dayton has or is currently adopting a transportation system plan. And there may be some changes needed to that if the zoning is changed with the HCA.
The big ones on here on this list, kind of in order of. The next ones up are the transportation, the updates of the transportation system plan. Updating public facilities plan, specifically the wastewater master plan. Under chapter 9, and then updating chapter 3 to meet the requirements of goal 5. Which addresses natural and historic resources, to adopt a local wetlands inventory.
Thank you.
So that is that's a concern that DLCD has raised about in the course of this project, that currently the current information that's in the comprehensive plan does not meet the current rules for meeting goal 5, because of the absence of that local wetlands inventory. So those are the next big planning initiatives that are kind of coming down the pike. Next one's in the queue.
The inventory for the riparian corridors, is that anything we already have? I don't recall that.
We have very loose language addressing riparian corridors in the comprehensive plans.
And would that also address any of the issues between the farmland and the city?
Nope.
Okay,
Um,
dang it all.
I'm sort of speaking off the cuff here. I'm hopeful that that can be addressed in the Parks Master Plan, because that seems to be the best place to put a buffer there and create a greenway buffer in that area. That is a policy that's in the comprehensive plan that was implemented with the EPP swap, but
Okay.
seems to be a logical place to address it. But that's just me.
We just have people who complain, they're like 5 streets down, but the dust is coming. Never mind, they moved to a agricultural area. Okay.
Okay. And then finally, in this roadmap, we lay out the process for updating it, which would be a legislative action, hearings with the planning commission and city council, as you probably already know. And approval by ordinance, and then the state would also require notification as well. So I think that's all we have for you, and we're happy to talk about any of these topics more if you have questions, comments. Love to get feedback.
Commission is gonna be busy.
I guess another thing that's worth mentioning about that, 188 total units that's anticipated to be needed, that's was identified in the statewide housing needs analysis. That's not a prescriptive number, that's that's like
And
the
actual
lowest possible target, so, so you could certainly put policies in place that encourage more housing, because David certainly has the capacity to do it, and we've already had pre-app meetings with, developers, and the total number of units, in those potential projects far exceed that 188 number of units.
That would be fabulous. No.
But it's really, the wastewater
That's the issue.
limitations, that's the main issue.
Just
Well,
go for it.
we've been talking about wastewater issues. What about clean water issues? We're talking about bringing more people in. I've had a question for a while, Neck Road, do we have the water? Where are we gonna get the water? And it sounds like we don't. What, this is getting a little tricky. So what do we do?
Yeah, I can't.
I mean, we're making plans because we need to, and they need to be in place. But I think we need to acknowledge the inconvenient truth, we might not. If we build 188 units, can we supply them with water?
If we
Isn't
get
that
the
what
other,
we're facing?
well, to some degree, I mean, if we get the wells online, the fish farms, it'll be fine, not a
For
problem.
how long? I
For a
think,
while,
For a while.
yeah, for a while.
Yeah,
Yes, go for it.
I remember you yesterday.
Good. Go for it,
So,
please.
a couple things with regard to freshwater usage. So if we get Fisher Farms online, it should bump by what, 400, 500 gallons a minute or roughly. So then that would allow us to rest the other well field, let that aquifer recharge, and then also give us some time to work on the watershed housing and transit line capabilities that would then increase as well once that project is done. Is that an accurate, very quick recap?
So now-
Yes.
Okay. So lots of opportunities if we can get the funding that we're applying for. That'll give us a long way into the future. Anyway.
okay, cool.
I'll just add, there's a lot of some of the numbers regarding the potential productivity of Fisher Farms is it's
Rough.
old, needs to be updated, so there's still a lot of uncertainties. But that could be a potential medium-term solution to our water needs.
We'll have further discussions, so, yeah.
Um,
All right, does anybody else have any more comments, questions, concerns, planning commission? Yes, sir.
So one thing, and this is just me kind of becoming a little bit more familiarized with kind of where we're at in a specific process. Kind of, so we have our recommendations. So steps along the process, where we're at now, next step is going to be when, what is kind of the end goal of adoption, public hearing? Kind of what kind of timeline are we functioning on, I think is kind of a main question that I have. Because obviously we're not going to adopt anything next week, right? But, are we looking at making some changes 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, a year and a half from now? Kind of where in that process are we at this point in time? It's just kind of a curiosity that I would have.
Probably 2 years.
2 years, there we go.
For the housing capacity analysis.
Cool. Okay.
Really, it's, as I said, the wastewater master planning is what's really, the main issue is that's standing in the way of bringing more land into the city.
Yeah.
And I'm told that process will be 2028, 29, before that's resolved, so. So, yeah, I think we're gonna be patient and we're gonna, we'll definitely, put in another grant at the first opportunity.
Okay.
To get that work underway, but, and the folks that want to annex will have to just be patient.
Sounds good. So next we'll hear about really anything on this is gonna be a hot minute.
Yeah.
So like I said, we'll bring a resolution to city council just to kind of have a record that you endorse this path. Cool. So we have the confidence that you're behind us as we pursue these things. Cool.
Sounds great. Is that, that resolution, is that gonna be at the next meeting that,
Yeah.
creates support for pursuing? Okay.
Well, how far we?
You wrote that resolution already, didn't you, Kurt?
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, that's all you got? Anybody else? Mm-mm. All right then, your option is off the table now.
Thank you. by the way, appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. We're gonna move on to city council comments and concerns, and we're gonna start with council action.
About the LOC conference, registration is about to begin or coming up pretty soon. In the past, the city manager or the city actually registered me for the conference and I took care of my own logic. Can I ask the city to continue that, or do you want me to sign up for the conference by myself?
We're happy to sign up any counselors who would like to.
Thank you.
We're here to serve you, make it easy for you.
All right, that way you get to put it on your credit card first.
We might hit a quorum for that.
It helps. Are you going?
Yeah.
Cool. Those are good conferences. I take full advantage. I get into an elevator as soon as the door closes. Ooh, captive audience. Did I say that out loud? Oh, I have so much fun.
Excellent. All right, Counselor Teckrell.
I have nothing.
All right, Counselor Hildebrand,
I
I know
got-
you've got
I got a
stuff.
lot, buckle up, everybody, I got 10 minutes of stuff to talk about. So part of the reason for me bringing a myriad of things to the council tonight is, with the LOC, city day yesterday, there was a myriad of different topics that were spitballed, discussed, and in an effort to prevent serial meetings, in an effort to prevent, anything that could get any of us in trouble, the idea is to bring forward a lot of these topics, just so everybody's kind of on the same page of kind of where some of the ideas are at, where, kind of where kind of some of the brain power is at with regards to just upcoming things that we should be thinking about and discussing. Also in the minutes, so that anybody who's not in attendance tonight can refer to the minutes and then ask questions that they have. So, to recap a little bit, I'm actually gonna start prior to the LOC day yesterday. And then I'm gonna start in December. The Parks Committee had a meeting with regard to Dayton Landing. And so in the minutes, they are all available on the county website. I have a copy here for anybody who'd like to read it after the meeting is over. Essentially, long story short, I was gonna read the whole thing into the record, but that's gonna take too damn long, so I'm just gonna summarize. Essentially, they are in support of selling is the key piece that they discussed. Dayton Landing to the city of Dayton. They talk about how that would be beneficial for all concerned, they can't keep up with Dayton Landing at the time due to the costs. There was a comment about safety. And then their starting point with regard to the sale is the appraisal that we had from an appraiser for that property. So that's kind of where they're at with their observations of that space. Now, I'm gonna pause on the Dayton Landing piece because that's gonna come back into play when we get into LOC. So LOC yesterday was eye-opening in a myriad of different ways. I've said myriad 20 times already. So in a phenomenal way, they were, the presentations were great. The priorities of the legislative bodies and of our lobbyists and, everybody there was very clear and concise and effective in a lot of different ways, which is cool. So, the focus for the state is very much on infrastructure, on housing, on right here.
Third thing.
Building costs. There's third thing. Anyway, you can read the packet. So we sat through a bunch of different presentations, and some of the things that were brought up in discussion in between these presentations, starting at the top. So one thing that we as a council, I think, should be very cognizant of when we talk about things that we are being faced with in time to come, whether it's days, weeks, months, years, is problems will unite us, solutions will divide us, and that's a council, that is a community. You know, we face problems day in, day out, small, medium, and large. However, all of us will find different ways, whether it's at the dais, whether it is, you know, members of the community, of ways to solve those problems. So the way in which we communicate some of these problems are going to be really important, both in from here to the public and interpersonally amongst ourselves. So it's just something to think about. There's not a solution or a recommendation in that statement. That's just one thing that they really drove home, is especially when we're talking about the public safety levy, for example, right? There's so many different ways that we could approach the public safety levy. It was a little divisive last time because solutions were what drove it rather than the problem was what drove it, right? So we put forward the solutions rather than necessarily handling it on the back end. But if
Bringing
we,
that community in.
yeah, so then it got a little divisive and okay, maybe we have a different idea here, maybe we have a different idea there. So being very problem focused and collaborative focused, but then handling some of the solutions, you know, in ways that may not bring quite as much divisiveness to the table. There's just some things to think about with regards to how we approach all of it.
As well as being very concise with our message about what it is we want specifically.
Very specific. So, in that, I'm gonna try to be very concise with some of the problems, and some of the ideas that we had discussed yesterday with regards to those problems, that we're gonna be facing in the near to short term. So, one of the things that has been discussed a lot is Ferry Street and how ODOT currently owns Ferry Street. ODOT is facing a $65 million deficit to their budget this year. It is a perfect time to broach a conversation with them about potentially getting Ferry Street. So that's something that would be good for maybe us as a council to discuss in the meetings to come. Public safety is something that was discussed. So there's a few different solutions that were brought forward to discuss public safety, whether that is, you know, the levy solution, like what we're currently doing, potentially, and the mayor's offered to bring this up in a mayor's coffee in the future. You know, similar to Newburgh Dundee, maybe we talk to McMinnville and see if an expansion of McMinnville public safety could be on the cards for Dayton, Lafayette, us, you know, we'll see. You know, what our options are with regards to public safety, because what we do know is what we are currently doing is not sustainable. And so there is going to be, whether it is passing a levy, whether it is, you know, tying into McMinnville, their police department, you know, there's a lot of different options on the table, but it is something that will be increasingly more a conversation amongst us here and amongst the community. It's already a big conversation amongst the community. And so that should be one of the things that should be first and foremost in our thoughts. Dayton Landing, we're gonna circle back to that. So one of the things that the LOC does in just a very small topic of what they discussed was, you know, those speed signs, like what we have coming into the south side of Dayton. So they actually help fund those. And so right now we can't put anything on Ferry Street because we don't own Ferry Street, but we own Fletcher. Right? And so maybe Fletcher coming into town could be an option. That's one of the other high-speed locations that is a concern quite regularly.
Is there already one there?
Not on Fletcher Road, there is on Ash.
There is on Ash, but the Dayton Together Coalition put one in, coming in. If there was one.
There's no sign there other than a regular speed sign.
Yeah, not a monitoring sign. So something small
It
for.
was there.
Yeah.
They put two in. Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay,
No worries.
well, yeah, we need
Small
more.
topic, yep, small topic for us to chat about. And then, the last main one is, we had met with, and this is probably going into your update, so I apologize if I'm kind of stepping on your toes. So when we met with Representative Scharf yesterday, we had talked about, you know, obviously our water funding, the 1.2 that we're gonna be requesting, there's potentially two different options, whether that's in a water bill or in a general fund, I believe is the. proper term.
Economic development.
Economic development, thank you very much. There's a couple different ways that we could potentially get that funding. At the conclusion of the meeting, she had mentioned, hey, is there anything else that I can help you with at this point? It's like, actually, So we had brought up, circling back, we had brought up the Dayton Landing situation and kind of spelled out where their interests were, where our interests were, the fact that, you know, whether it's, I don't know, just throwing that number, I don't know what the appraisal was, but $500,000, $400,000, something like that.
This is around $250,000.
$250,000, there we go. Thank you, I appreciate that. I think the 400 that I was getting was from the well field production. So she looked at us and said, hey, just ask them to seed it to you. You know, I'll help. She's offered to help us with that in her own way.
She said,
But-
write a letter.
Yeah.
And she will sign her name to it.
And wordsmith it, so it sounds like.
Yeah, wordsmith it, and then she will
Yeah.
sign it and we can give it to the
Yeah.
county commissioners.
So, you know, the reality is, in her perspective is, it's like, hey, they can't maintain it, it's on their books. If you can get it off their books, maybe pay a little bit of money, but, you know, realistically, just have them give it to you. We have her support in that, so the idea is that we will have. Whether it's, you know, a coalition or however we want to approach this. We'll, at some point in time, communicate with the county this intent with her backing and see where those chips fall. And then that's, at this point in time. All I got. Things, Malcolm, Tim. Any questions?
No, but thank you.
Was that
for
a
this.
fair?
That was a fair, quick. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if I could ask a question, since I'm not a member of council. For both the Dayton Landing and for Ferry Street for that matter, are we prepared to, and it's gonna take a financial plan to figure out how we're going to take care of those spaces. The point was driven home to me about Ferry Street in recent months that, probably the poor thing was hit by a car. There was a deceased cat, in the right of way in front of our home. Called Wycombe about it, said we'll take care of it. Wycombe called Dayton Public Works, found out, no, the Dayton Public Works doesn't take care of that.
Mhm.
Fortunately, since it's a state highway, I was able to call the state of Oregon and have them come and collect this deceased cat. We would need to be able to take care of things like that within the city. I mean, that was just one example, but there are a bunch of things like that we would have to take care of and maintain in both spaces. And we'll need to consider carefully how we're going to do that if we're gonna take on these spaces to be owned by the city.
Very good point, man.
Mhm.
So, there's a few benefits just in the form of communication, right? Instead of calling 3 departments, we call 1 department, in an ideal scenario. But one of the things that we discussed yesterday was, you know, we are limited in what we can do for funding a lot of different things, right? So, you know, we learned about compression. I've already forgotten what a compression is.
It's hard to explain.
Very hard to find. So, you know, our levers that we can pull for funding, as we all know, are very limited, right? So whether, you know, how, HB 5 and 50, I think is what they were. You know,
5 and 50,
5 and 50 really lock us in on some of these property tax rates. You know,
We are forever stuck at $1.79 or whatever it is.
at this point, you know, LOC's working on trying to see
Get that.
if there's ways to address that so that it kind of helps in some components. We did increase our TLT. What was it, a few months back? So you know, I don't remember what we were at, but we.
Today, now we're at 11.
Now we're at 11, so we had bumped it up, you know, pretty significantly, so that when the new developments come online for lodging,
We are
ideally we'll be getting some, you know, good,
some
some
funding for the
funding for
city.
that.
Yeah.
they can help in some capacities. There's also restrictions on how we can apply that,
But they're trying to change that too.
but they're trying to change that. One thing that we don't have right now, and we have to be really careful on this because, you know, we've been raising water rates, we're gonna be raising sewer rates. There is a utility fee that at some point, if we needed to, we could have as a discussion. It's for the city of Gresham as an example. They have a $15 utility fee on every utility bill. It's how they fund their police department and their fire department. So there's not a ton of levers. If we find that we need to over the course of time, there's a couple that we can pull. We have to be really careful about it because we don't want to, you know, piss off everybody in town by, you know, imposing fees that are deemed unnecessary or wasteful. So you have to be very careful about how we approach these things, how we approach the narratives. But there are a couple levers that we can pull over the course of time if we need to address exactly that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a fair?
Yes,
Fair
very good.
representation? Okay, cool.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Did answer your question as well.
Yeah, it's the. What I was asking for was for the matter to be given due diligence and due consideration, and it sounds like it will be. Hopefully that will come into what the decisions that are made as to whether or not we proceed with either one of those plans.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
We're a ways away from those things.
Ways away.
Yeah,
Ways away.
lots of discussion happened. All right, any other questions before I dive into my comments? Okay. I have a really big favor. Well, I don't know if it's really a favor, but I am struck by some of the ice raids and things going on. And a lot of the Hispanic community is very scared and worried. I have a lot of friends at my job. In fact, my whole office is Hispanic. I'm the only white girl in there. But I love these girls and they are experiencing the fear. They have friends that are experiencing the fear. And I spent my morning crying. And I would like for us, I mean, of course, I want bad criminals to go away, but there's a number of people who are being affected by this that are scared to death. They're scared to go to school. They're scared to go to work. There are fathers that have been ripped away from their families, and I just feel like there should be something better. But what I'd like to do is come up with some sort of resolution saying that the city of Dayton, our council, supports our Hispanic community and that we value them and we appreciate that community and we need that community here. They make up nearly half of Dayton's community. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want my neighbors to feel that kind of fear that they're feeling right now. So I would like for a resolution to come up with a resolution that we may adopt just in support and letting them know that, you know, there are people here that do care about them and are worried about their situations.
May I?
Yes.
We already have that. April of 2017, I think it was officially resolution of inclusiveness.
Doesn't, we need to reaffirm and say something different because
I have asked our new city manager to do just that. I would like to revisit it.
I want to be a little more specific than just inclusiveness.
Well, maybe we could start with what we already have. But yeah, we tried that and it was just a grand gesture that hasn't really done anything.
I'm not done.
Okay, sorry.
I'm not done. In addition, on our city website and our social media pages, I would like us to put up some factual information and resources for our Hispanic community. If they are scared, people that can call, what they need to do, what their rights are, that's important. I think it's important that we provide that to them. It doesn't mean we're trying to play sides or whatever. We're giving information to our community. Okay. The other thing is I want us to host a town hall and have Unidos or what was the other group that you told me about?
Safe routes immigration with.
There's a few different ones that could be here to answer questions, to hand out information. And I think that'll go a long way to make people feel a little more comfortable and feel like their whole damn town don't hate them. So that's my ask, which I hope I can find some support. We can talk about it more at the next meeting if you want, but if you're on board now and have a quorum, we can get that resolution going.
I will support it as long as I'm included.
Sure.
we do kind of need to address all of the protected classes. But I agree, the Spanish speaking community is under attack in ways that are inhumane. So, yeah, I'm on board with that.
All right. And if anybody else has any questions or concerns, please now or forever hold your peace. Yes, sir.
Something you just said about people wondering if their whole town hates them. We all, as individuals, can combat that. And I don't have much interaction with members of the Latinx community here. Possible exception of Juanita and her and her staff, and we're regular customers. But whenever people of Euro-Caucasian descent and our privilege, which we have, like it or not, interact with people of Latinx, be friendly, be respectful,
If
be open.
only it was that easy for some people.
But it's part of, it is part of the equation. It's part of
Absolutely.
what makes the difference, and that's the point that I wanted to make, is that it does start with the city. It also starts with everyone in the city.
Part of the reason for me wanting to do the resolution and all of this is because I want people within the city who are afraid to even come forward and support the Hispanic population. If the city steps up, us as a council, and says something, that's gonna make it a little easier for the next person to step in and say, yeah, you know what, I'm on board with that. The girls and I are planning February 8th, Saturday at noon, a rally protest. We're gonna walk from the front of Perdita down 3rd, all the way down Lafayette Avenue and up to 99 to where Walmart and all those stores are throwing away their DEI crap. As well as some other things. Oh, and recently they just got rid of their aisle of Hispanic products, is what I understand they're doing as well. Or so I've been told. It's already happened in Target. So these kind of things are they tell our Hispanic community they don't matter by doing things like that. And they do matter. And that's what we need to make sure that they know that.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes.
I have been less than comfortable for a number of years. It's as if we have to be too careful to not upset the intolerant ones. And maybe it's going to take diplomacy, but we need to step up and protect people rather than just not upset the others. I'm on board with that completely.
Yeah, well, that's what I hope will promote other people to step in and say their piece and actually, because I think more people in the community support the Hispanic community as opposed to not. But I do know of some who have literally said some very nasty things. And if they're in front of me and I hear anything, I'm not gonna tolerate that, so.
Member.
Yes, sir.
So, I think this is a very powerful message, and it's one that I'm obviously in full support of. I think we'll make it the most powerful that it can be, because we meet again in a week, right? I think rather than voting on something tonight, I think because it also sounds like Councilor Mackin would like to have.
She would probably like to help words
have
the
some
resolution.
wordsmithing.
Yeah.
So over the course of the next week, maybe we wordsmith something, and then we bring it to that council meeting, and then have it in the most official capacity it can be in. That'd be a fair compromise.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm not asking you to vote on it.
Oh, gotcha,
tonight.
okay, gotcha.
I just wanted to get everybody's input, but yeah, you're good with that, so let me move forward with actually wordsmithing.
Wordsmithing, yes, because one of my complaints about the resolution of inclusiveness was whereas, wherefore.
You have to
wherefore.
say that in the resolution.
I'm gonna see,
You can't,
can we summarize it somehow?
yes,
And then
but
go
you can't
through all
take
of
the
those.
whereas out,
Whereas is in the
unfortunately,
whereas is in
it's
there.
part of the official document.
We need a Cliff Note summary. Let's work on that, I think.
Okay, so anyways, I'm down, I'm done. Don't got nothing else. Economic Development,
Nothing tonight.
Mr. City Manager Jeremy.
Madam Mayor, I'll present a full report on my activities at Monday night's meeting.
Perfect, all right. Anybody have anything else good, bad to say before we? All right, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned 7:44.